Good evening. This is the planning board meeting of the Village of Dobbs Ferry for March 3, 2016. We have 7 items on our agenda this evening. The first item is to adopt the minutes of the last several meetings. We have not received minutes to review, so we will wait for next month for that. As many of you know, the village clerk has a broken bone and has not been at full strength for some time, so that it's understandable. Item number 2 is discussion on site plan issue to the Board of Trustees for 100 Main Street. I think people in the audience here and at home will recognize that last meeting we finished our public discussion of that and closed the public hearing. We are on our way to a vote. I believe at this meeting we get an update from the applicant and comments from the board. We are not at full strength tonight. We have 4 members, and I think it would be appropriate that we hold this over for a vote at our next meeting in April. But there has been some changes to the plan submitted, and if you could bring us up to date on where we are.
Good evening, Pat. I'm Chairman of Gotham Design. The changes there have been no real changes of consequence made since the last meeting. We showed at the last presentation, public hearing, the changes that were made by the AHRB, which modified the way that the top floor on the project have been detailed. One change that we made, but I don't think it pertains really to this, is we've been asked by the building department to make the connection between the stair tower and the front building a hard condition space, so that it's not an open walkway. They wanted it enclosed. They wanted it to be something that is enclosed space. We also had a conversation with the building planner, who felt that we should add parking spaces in the form of pileups to it. So what we've done, we're really at what the board wants to do at this point. With that enclosed, with the additional parking provided in pileups, at that point, what we're looking at is whether it makes sense for us to use the front building instead of 2 duplex units as 4 flats. But we defer to the board. We're willing to do it either way.
I took it from your application, your letter, that was what you wished to do, was to create more units there, which would change the parking requirement, and is a significant change to the property in terms of intensity of use and so on.
But only following, because we're not leading it. The idea was, if we're making that hard connection, and if we're paying pileups for additional spaces, then it would make sense for us to consider making them 4 smaller units instead of the 2 larger units. I think our preference would be to leave everything as it was.
I'm confused. I'm sorry. Why are there any? Who's requesting payments in lieu of parking? Because you're meeting.
Yes.
Your current site plan meets. Huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Meets fully the requirement for off-street parking for the development the way it is now.
Correct.
So why are pileups even being raised in the equation now?
Is this chime in a bit?
Yeah, please.
We went over this with the building department, looking at another particular issue, but also looking at this one. There are on site now 3 parking spaces. They would be eliminated as part of the construction project, and thus producing 6 parking spaces. That would serve the elimination of the 3 spaces, in a sense, knocks out any parking for the commercial space that's on Main Street. So if you didn't have any parking to start, you would perhaps forego looking for a pilot. But by eliminating the 3 spaces, you now have 6 spaces serving 6 residential units and effectively 2 commercial spaces on Main. So it was felt that it was appropriate then. The planning board has the authority to say we can count on-street parking for those, and there's calculations you can do. But I think the fact that we took 3 parking spaces out and then produced 6 and now we're adding 4 units. It just looked to us like there was a net loss.
But I'm just, and then we don't have, we shouldn't belabor it now, I don't wanna make people crazy with why you try to explain it to me, but is there any retail on the ground floor of the existing building?
It's,
So,
And there's no
I'm still
parking.
not quite, right, so I'm still not quite getting it, because none of the parking that's used currently in that little courtyard area is used for retail parking, right?
well, there's 3 spaces and 2 residential units. As we've been allocating 1 space per residential unit, one could make the case, though I don't think it's used that way, that the other space was available for the operator of the retail space.
The thing that confused me is that in your application, you mentioned changing the units in the front building to, that would require 2 additional parking spaces.
Well, it's a very strange.
Well, let me finish. That would require 2 additional parking spaces because you'd have 4 units plus 4 new units, so you'd need 8 units. You need 8 spaces. You can only provide 6, and we wanted them all on site, so I'm a little confused as to how this is all working.
I'm not sure it is. We're trying to follow from what we're being asked to do, which is make a hard connection so that we can provide access to the upper units in the existing building. It doesn't make sense to do unless we are, unless those are units you can go to. The idea that we're going to modify the existing building and enclose that, is something we've been told we need to do. If we're being asked, if we're being asked to add 2 pubs, since the way we look at it is no parking is required for the retail space. We have 6 units. We had 6 spaces. We were compliant. We're being told add 2 pile-up spaces, which I don't think are for the retail space. Because there won't be, it just doesn't make, that just doesn't really make any kind of sense. So if we're going to pay for 2 pile-up spaces, make a connection so that you can go up the stairs and walk into the 2 upper units. Since our application was initially for those being divided, it seemed that that's where we were being driven to go. So we, as I said at the beginning of this,
Just, I
we're
think,
deferring.
if I don't mean to interrupt Patty, but the issue related to the conditioned space is about whether this is 1 building on site or 2 buildings. And this is strictly me not being the building inspector, but reporting back from working with the building inspector. If that open connection, breezeway, is left on the plan as it is, the building inspectors have said, this is 2 buildings, and you need a use variance because the back building does not have retail on the ground floor. That was a determination of, and I think members of the audience will also pointed this out. The solution to that then, so Patty, I mean, let's put this thing into logical connection. The purpose of this was, for the betterment of the applicant, I think, was that if that breezeway is conditioned space, then it is 1 building, and then you don't need to apply for a use variance. That was the basic rationale for doing that. If you want to go back to the breezeway and apply for a use variance, that's something you could do.
Except this board made a determination previously, a recommendation for approval of this application with the open breezeway. So I don't, I think this board has to be very careful with what it's doing, and we did have that conversation with the building inspector previous to that, and in my memory, Brian, please correct me if I'm wrong on this. We went through a whole conversation about if I have combustible construction that connects 2 pieces of something, at that point, the way the state treats it is a single structure. In fact,
Actually, our resolution that was sent on to the board in October says the planning board does not endorse the project as proposed. So I don't know, somehow or another, this is, I don't think being beneficial. I mean, the basic direction that the project took was a recommendation from the planning board, not endorsing the project, but listing out certain things that would have to be followed should the board of trustees wish to grant. Then the project went to the Architecture and Historic Review Board, and a lot of what's important in this project is stuff that relates to the Architecture and Historic Review Board. I mean, basically the look of the building and how. that project, that process made some progress, but we, in talking to the chair, they are still far from done with what the architectural treatment should be. So,
Well, wait, before we, since, yeah, I'm familiar with what Michael said, but they also took a vote, and the 3 members of the AHRB at the time voted to support the massing as it was designed with the top floor in place, and they sent a letter to that effect to the Board of Trustees.
which lends this whole thing to this circle that we're,
We-
a loop that we're in now that we can't seem to get out of.
I should have or could have mentioned before we started that at our last meeting, we closed the public hearing but allowed a 2-week window for people to submit written comments. During that period, we did receive one comment from Stephen Tilley and Elizabeth Martin, which we appreciate. We've also received from the Architecture Review Board an email from Michael Patino, and I'll just read it because it's easiest to do rather than trying to characterize it. Dear PB members, the draft resolution regarding 100 Main implies AHRB favors this project, and for that reason, the PB has reconsidered and is now approving a project you are against. I don't quite know how he gets that, but anyway. To clarify our position, we find the building to be problematic in many respects, including massing. While it has come a long way from its challenged departure point, we fully agreed with your previous assessment regarding the current scheme. Signed, Michael Patino. So that's where
it is now, which contradicts where it was before, because there was a letter before. And the forces that are taking action in this are something much more powerful than us. So that's why I defer, you guys do whatever you want.
Well, I think to Dwight's point, because it's been characterized that the resolution out of this board was an approval. You've mentioned that a couple of times, and I don't think it was.
It's
It was
not a
based,
recommendation for denial. It's a there are only 3 choices that this board has. It can either recommend denial, it can recommend approval, or it can recommend approval with conditions.
I
And
think,
the
but in this
way-
case, I believe, was a denial with a recommendation, as Dwight characterized it, of under what conditions it might be acceptable. I remember that clearly because I abstained, because I thought it was not a very clear resolution.
Yeah, that wasn't how I said.
So, one thing, well, first of all, I would say, I didn't realize that the breezeway, I'm having trouble following now this new thing with the breezeway and stuff. I guess, I would say that if we think the project is better without the breezeway, which I thought it was, then we should follow the process and Patty would get a variance. It could come with a strong or not, depending on how the chair feels, recommendation from us that we think that the zoning board should seriously consider this very, because it seems funny to me to build this breezeway thing and condition it in order to satisfy, it feels weird, kind of arcane to me to kind
all
of,
feels
for the sake of making it one building when everybody knows it's 2 buildings and so on. So I feel like the clearest thing would be for you to get the variance so that the breezeway thing goes away. And then I think wouldn't it be better to just debate then the merits of the project the way it currently is, without the breezeway, without the pilot issue, just because I feel like that's kind of where it really had gotten to that point. I wasn't at that meeting 2 times ago, but it sort of left here, right, and went to the Board of Trustees. So wouldn't that be the?
Nothing's been simple about working
No,
this through,
but-
but
but-
that is a simple solution. I mean, basically, if it's a better design to have the breezeway stay a breezeway, just for how it would be used, then you would have to go for a use variance because there is no commercial on the ground floor of the second building. And then maybe there's a rationale that you could make to the zoning board of appeals that says, well, that's fine, but did anybody really want retail up the block
Right.
and and still have the retail?
Retail is not required.
Or commercial space.
Residential is not permitted, is what the code says. It doesn't say you're supposed to have retail or commercial space. It says you can't have residential. So what we have is parking. we started this process, we proposed a project that didn't have parking. And this board took a very strong position on it and said they wanted us to raise the building up and put the parking in. We did.
And parking doesn't count as a story? I mean, do we
We
want
have,
to?
we have no problems with stories. If we have the code.
I don't think we want to get it to this level of this. I think the building department looked at it. The building department looked at this and came to these conclusions. I don't want to try to interpret what, that's their job. That's what they do.
So, just to put this pile-up business to rest, it's not any change to the plan, first of all. It is based on an assessment of what the baseline is, which is 2 apartments and 1 retail, and currently 3 spaces. So, now we're adding 4 apartments, so presumably there should be an addition of 4 parking spaces. Is that
That's
correct logic?
Better
Okay.
stated than I did.
All
So
right.
thank you.
So, but that's,
how many pilots were required?
We got to figure out how many units there are.
Well, if you had the 6 that we proposed.
well, you're proposing 4 new ones.
Well, no, we had a meeting and we made modifications consistent with the discussion in that meeting. At the meeting, there was a conversation that the perception was that we had 6 units we were adding. Is that correct?
That was straightened out at the meeting, so.
Okay, but I left the meeting being told we thought the application was for 6, and that's why we required the 2, so we made the application match that discussion.
I don't recall that. But
I
anyway,
mean, we were, as people, I think the chair perhaps was the one who pointed out, maybe, no, it was you, Dwight, very early on, said, I think if you get into looking at the existing building and you start talking about changing that existing building, you're gonna find it doesn't make economic sense. We accepted that, we agreed that, we were leaving that as 2 duplex units untouched, and we were proposing the addition on the back. And that's where we would like to stay. We were not, we haven't come here and said we want to add these things. This has been told to us about what we need to do to make this acceptable, which I don't think is having that effect. I don't think this is getting anywhere near acceptable, and we're talking of going to a zoning board after 2 years and 1 month of process. So I think it's, I mean, maybe you just want to say that the board has spoken and.
What's the time frame for you to get the variance?
If we were willing to make an application to the zoning board and go to the April meeting, sure,
The April meeting? Why the April meeting?
because that's the next meeting that would be on the agenda. Can I get on the agenda next Wednesday?
Why? Just because of the
You have to
timing?
submit 3 weeks in advance.
Our next meeting is April 7th.
Nice. And what does that mean?
So, well, my sense is that this board cannot reach a decision tonight, and it would be, we would like to hold it over until the next meeting when we have 5 members here to vote on it, so that we will,
I don't have a vote.
so we will have a decision.
But just to be clear, what are we voting on? The version that
We'll be
has,
voting on
the
whatever.
version that has this
Well,
breezeway?
no, we would not have made any changes to the drawings if we weren't told to make changes to the drawings. We think that what we had before was a good way of approaching this. We made a tremendous number of concessions, changes.
I
We went
appreciate all that.
way off the reservation of what in my mind made sense to do things. We're duplicating a building that has some sense of something, which I'm not even gonna go there. So that's what you've got. That's what you've got. I did not interpret, and perhaps I should have, maybe that was just my misreading of it, that since you got 3 choices, I didn't interpret it as this is the recommendation of denial.
Okay.
So if this board has recommended denial of the Board of Trustees, why don't we simply get this back on the agenda of the Board of Trustees and let them deny the project? Why are we
One of the
going through this process?
options for tonight, but there's a split board. I mean, one of the things that could have been decided was that we're not changing. The board was not gonna change its prior recommendation and stands by the October. But I think there was, that wasn't a consensus. There's different feelings on the board that maybe they'd like to take a second look.
But here's my question, if, in order to get this done, if we can't vote on something, I assume if it's, if this variance issue is sort of hanging out there, can we still vote on it? Or can it be a provision of the?
Subject to?
Is it one of these things that could be subject to a resolution of the of this breezeway business?
It can be that, or if the Board of Trustees was favorable towards approving this, which is no indication that they are, at that point, they could waive the necessity of that. It's a, you know, we deal with an old village that has a great history. We have buildings that are unique, that are different than what perhaps would have been built in the 1950s. So what you get is a character that, in my frame of mind, would be embraced, but what we seem to be trying to do is fit it into a very different box. And what you run into then is things don't really work.
I just want to make sure that when you come here, Nick, if you're not, since you will not have been able to go to the, even if you wanted to the zoning board, I just want to make sure that when the applicant comes back at our next meeting, there isn't something that would stop us from just having, assuming there are 5 of us here, an up or down vote.
I think because it's a recommendation,
We can-
you can. You obviously couldn't, you can't have an approval with a condition on achieving the variance. That, the variance has to precede that.
But we could vote up or down on our resolution.
Right.
With a proviso that somehow this breezeway, our recommendation that the breezeway does not have to be built and so on, and then presumably, but can the Board of Trustees act on it without, or he would have then gone to the
Right.
ZBA?
He'd have to go to the ZBA then. I think the
Okay.
Board of Trustees is bound the same way we are, that it should be, or they could do the waiver, though we've,
The interpretation is to the unwritten part of the code. We're not talking about a problem with the written section of the code. It's the unwritten section of the code. It's the section of the code that doesn't say that if you have 2 buildings on one parcel, one is required to be an accessory structure, thereby triggering the rule that it cannot include residential units because residential units cannot be located in an accessory structure. We have many other properties in town that have 2 primary.
I'm sorry, is he advising the board?
I'm the applicant speaking to the board.
it would all,
Let's just, you can describe.
if it's,
Forget.
I think at this stage of the game, it's best to just hold it over and we'll, pull together resolutions, however many are, to allow a vote at the next meeting. And at least we can move it from where it is now to where it has to be dealt.
I just have one quick question. So if we are, right, all this is because we're making the umbilical cord stronger between these 2 buildings and now constituting it as one building. So then, does it not trigger anything else in the existing building by this being de facto addition?
Yeah, I think you're coming to where Patty's probably starting to look at problems, so that the breezeway could connect to a porch or something like this. I don't know how it's gonna be used on the other plan, but once you've hardened it and connected into the building, then where does it arrive inside the existing building? And we've started to discuss this ourselves and think,
Well, I'm just talking about, you know, I believe there are certain codes that if there's an improvement made on a property of a certain value or area or size or whatever, then upgrades need to be made in the original structure. So I just want to, you know, if we're directing the applicant to take a path that doesn't unravel into something else, is there anything else looking down the road?
it could. I'm not, the building construction codes stuff are for the building inspector, not for my limited wisdom.
Is the existing building sprinkled?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is a continuation of public hearing for site plan approval for proposed multifamily residential building with garage and parking located at 255 Broadway.
This is our landscape. See how quickly that goes. Gotta watch the
Crunch on.
the mic.
I didn't get to speak into the mic.
Broadway. And we're here for the third time. We had pre-submission, we had a public hearing with the planning board. We went to the AHRB for 2 meetings. First for preliminary, then we went to the zoning board, we received variances. There were minor variances for setback and minor one for coverage. And then we went back to the AHRB February 8th and received approval. And now we're back. We've been responding to a series of memos from Han Engineering. And one of the items that we submitted recently to you was a detailed landscaping plan. I hope you received them. We were asked by the AHRB to submit that. We actually met with some people on the aqueduct. We met with Mavis Kane and Stephen Oakes to discuss how we might handle the green space along the aqueduct. So we prepared that plan that I'm going to show you tonight. We also submitted, one of the items on Han Engineering's memo was a lighting plan, exterior lighting. We submitted that to the AHRB that they reviewed. But I brought copies because we didn't specifically submit it to the planning board. This is our detailed landscaping plan. We went out to the site and we know that, and we took a look at it with Mavis and Stephen, and one thing we all agreed is that we would not have a row of arborvitae, that we'd have an interesting mix of evergreens, and use all native plants, and we worked with a landscape designer to come up with this scheme. And originally we had, when we first came here, we had a wall. We had a secondary wall here with a planter. Instead of that, we want to have a common garden area. And this wall is about, it goes from about 4.5 feet in tapers all the way to where it hits the hill, because this grade is sloping down about 5 feet from one corner to the other. This slopes down, and this is where we have like a mosaic of perennials and ground cover and grasses intermixed with different evergreen shrubs and trees. And this will be a fieldstone wall, and this wall is just just above the grade here, and this will create a fairly level area just for the residents that live here. There's a higher wall here that's about 7 feet high, and that wall is high simply because it's going to screen the cars that are on the outdoor parking space. The outdoor parking is about 2 feet above the common garden, and then we're going up another 5 feet so that we can screen the cars. And we're also using that wall so we can have our exterior lights recessed in the wall and looking away from the aqueduct and into the parking area.
You may have given us a topo on this earlier, but it would be helpful in understanding the impact of the plantings that you have, if we had a topo to know where your height is against the path and the aqueduct and so on.
Or a cross-section would be even,
In cross-section would be
through the building.
would be
the
even
garden.
better.
We have a cross-section that we submitted early on.
Right, I remember you had a side elevation that had,
Right.
there, that has,
I'm gonna see if I can blow this up.
although that,
Yeah, it would do a meeting, but
oh.
while she's doing that, this is a public hearing, and I would move that we open the continuation of the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Aye, all in favor? Aye, thank you. Okay.
This is we have a slope, the driveway slopes down gradually. and we have an outdoor parking space, and then we have a 5-foot wall wrapping 3 sides of where the cars will be parked. We have actually raised this up so that we could create this fairly level area, so it would be a useful garden for the residents. And we had a previous scheme where we actually had a planter. Instead of that, we raised this up, and we have a bigger planted area, which is going to be bordered by ground cover perennials and have a lawn in the middle. We'd like to use like an eco lawn, which doesn't use a lot of water. And then just below the new wall, I just realized I don't have the most current print of section through here because we have changed it. But that's indicated on our landscaping plan where we have our common garden, and then we have a low wall that it varies from 4.5 feet to 0 because the grade is actually going down from the south corner of the property line to the north. I have a 3D sketch, maybe that'll help you visualize this.
And these walls are all stone or stone?
All stone,
faced?
field stone.
Now, your lighting plan has a different landscape plan on it. It shows two
That
large,
lighting plan was a plan that we submitted to the AHRB, so we still have to make it in sync with our new landscaping plan, which we just submitted a few days ago.
but that lighting plan shows 2 large trees, so at the moment, you don't have
They were
anything.
actually, that was our original plan, and we put more effort into looking at it more carefully. Those were new trees, but now what we'd like to do, we have actually four new trees in the back, 4 in the front, and then smaller shrubs and trees around the edges. This is just much more detailed, and I think a better design than we had originally.
But in terms of screening the building from the aqueduct, I think that's part of the concern. So what one sees looking up, if you have larger trees there, yeah.
Exactly what I was looking
Yeah,
for.
this is sketch, but we're combining a variety, is on our landscaping plan, we have probably 5 different varieties of native shrubs and trees, and we wanted to look as natural as possible. That was the goal. And we may have a deciduous tree, but the idea is to try to, make it have this nice transition from the built environment, to, something that's a little looser, and then the aqueduct, which is long. This is the wall that we have raised up so that it would be 5 feet above the parking area, and this wall will be field stone. And there's a lower wall here that goes from 4.5 feet and tapers to 0 because the hill's going down, and the common garden is, fairly level.
Christine, could you pull it over a little bit so we could just see the adjacent parking garage to the north? Just want to see,
Yeah.
compare the scale there of the.
I also want to just go back a little to say that one reason why we located the building towards the front, where it's actually lined up where the original building used to be, so we could leave this open space between the building and the aqueduct. And we have about 50 feet from the property line to the aqueduct to the building. And then to the wall, we have on one end, I think about 22 feet, and the other end 31 feet. The wall, which is the screen of the outdoor parking area.
Could you keep moving that across so we can see the existing apartment there next door? Oh, that's as far as.
This has, I believe, 59 units. We're proposing 10. And by the zone code, we could have gone to 15 if we divide the amount of square feet per unit allowed. I don't know if you'd like to see the design that we reviewed with the AHRB. We had a more colorful like before, this is just showing the new building compared to what exists, the kind of impervious area that was there. There was a house, driveway, and pool. And just to refresh your memory, we kept the driveway on the side because there's already a curb cut, and it seemed to work well to just keep that, especially since the neighbor has a very nicely developed privacy hedge and wall next to it. In fact, one of the items that we were asked to respond to from Han Engineering was to see if we could get a letter from the neighbor. I'm going to show you the front. A letter from the neighbor allowing us to replace the hedge if in the event it is adversely affected by development. Because it's a very nice way of handling, two hard edges as a driveway on each side. And we intend to replace it if we have to. And I don't know if you have that letter, but I have copies in case.
I think we got that.
I'd like to pass that out.
We did that.
Yeah.
In the front, on our landscaping plan, what we need to do is to have similar idea that we're going to antidote and have 4 nice-sized evergreen trees and then smaller evergreen shrubs. The whole combination of ground cover and perennials, stone wall going up to the main entrance, green buffer of grasses and ground cover along the driveway, and then the pathway will be a combination of pea gravel and stone slab treads. I think this is our lighting plan, and the idea behind that is the lighting for the parking area is going to be recessed into the wall. So we'll be looking in. We'll have some sconces on the wall, but there will be have covers on them that have obscured glass. We're going to have some lighting along the wall here, along this wall here too. Recessed lighting and overhang at the front entry. These are the engineering drawings that were reviewed by Han Engineering. I think the review and response from Hudson Engineering has come to an end, I think. And these are the elevations that were approved. I'm sorry, everything is enlarged here. The ARB, this is our color scheme on the sides. This is showing the cement board and stucco and trellis and roof deck on top of the building. Last time we're here, we also looked at the before and after studies. We replaced the new building with the latest design. This is before and after in front. Looking at the Broadway. What we did, the idea behind the height and massing was that it would be very similar in massing to the old building, the 3-story building to the south, in size, at least in width and in height. And this is again the view of the back. So what we want to do, our intention is to conceal the cars entirely from the avenue.
In the Han report, it's recommended that the final landscape plan be submitted to our consulting landscape architect.
She was actually copied on the email, but I don't know if she's received it, do you know?
She has received it,
has it.
and
Okay.
she hasn't prepared any comments as of yet, until the board says, that's something that you agree with,
Right.
that she should look at
Okay.
and take a detailed,
Yeah.
give you a detailed opinion.
Okay. And secondly, that the long-form environmental assessment, if that has not been submitted, that be submitted.
Yes, I noticed we need to take care of that. It said recommended, so I guess we'll have to take care of that,
Yeah.
sure.
recommended.
If you want to approve.
Take that as,
Well, one note in the memo I just wanted to go over is the recreational fees. It says in Tom's memo that we have no recreational space. Is that, do these garden areas count, or is it?
10% of the land. 10%
Has to be for,
recreation, dedicated.
I see. We'll look into that.
just send a check, it's a lot easier.
So my thought is, I think this back garden area is going to be very nice, but my sense was that the goal from the AHRB was to better screen the building. There's not a lot of depth there. You have more or less one row of plantings that are left. So I think that's the compromise. My expectation had been, more and taller things there. And then, it's sort of a comment on the, I guess, massing or architecture that, when I walk on the aqueduct, I don't like, well, mostly you see the backs of buildings and you're looking at, masses and so forth. And here you have balconies, a lot of openness. And, it's a little bit on putting the aqueduct on display.
I'd be happy to look into the height, because I think we can go up to like 20 feet and not even affect the view above. So, I need to just take a look at how much the trees can get. I mean, we don't want them too high, but I think you're right. If there's a certain height, you may not really have, the building wouldn't have as much of a presence.
I think some views along the aqueduct, looking back at the building, of course, is I think, key. From as you move up and down and north and south.
We actually had a lot of views in the past, which is settled on this one, but we can see what we can do, but I think a lot of getting the right height, massive, a number of trees probably is key to getting a nice sense of green space rather than building.
I mean, maybe instead of a lawn, clear area, that becomes more of a rock garden with trees, so it's a different experience in there. And you're under trees as opposed to
Yes.
in an open area.
Yeah, we can definitely, we don't need that amount of space. It seemed nice to have some useful space back then, but we can definitely fill it in with more evidence, for sure.
Maybe the tree climbing can be the recreational space.
You have a zip line, right?
Maybe we can work with Lucille once, and we'll work with her on that and make sure that we come up with the right solution that we're comfortable with.
I only have one concern, which is that we make sure, and it sounds like you're doing that by promising that the evergreens between the property to the north and your building are gonna be either maintained or replaced. But the one view, you had one side elevation of the, if you go to it. My only concern would be to not be able to make sure that from various points of view, that view, that you can't see underneath the building. And it seems like you kind of screen from the aqueduct. It seems like that's kind of what you've done. The walls have been set at this height so that you only see the building, you only see the residential portion of the building. But from the sides, I don't know what the
Well, there's a huge
view
apartment.
says. There's a really big building to the
Right,
north.
Yeah, just to the north.
To the north, but I don't know if you're standing on Broadway and looking.
All right.
I just don't know if I would make sure that it's screened from both the north and the south so that you don't get the sense of looking underneath a building that's on islands.
I can't see a beauty.
This, I could pull this up, maybe that would help, because
It's hard to tell with just a vacant lot.
it's a long, narrow site,
Right,
so
Drops down.
the only way you
Right,
can
because-
see,
but that's because those trees are still there, right, which is, as should be, and hopefully they'll still be there after you're done with your construction. Those are all existing trees, right?
Yes.
The ones that are screening the side of the
Yes.
building.
And this belongs to the neighbor, and there's letters to say we have agreed to replace them.
Right,
And if they are harmed,
right.
because they're out on the property line.
And how about if you're on Broadway walking, on that other sidewalk, walking north and looking at the south-facing elevation of your building? Will you, again, be able to sort of look in and underneath to where the parking is, or do you think it'll be obscured? I mean, I guess in that rendering, if it's to be believed, you're not.
You know, we put the building into a photograph, so there are overgrown trees there.
Uh-huh.
No, it is
You
open
know,
on the south side,
I
yeah.
wanted to show you
Yeah,
the
it's open on
south
both
side,
sides.
Right.
because we closed up. We took the whole south side and closed it up, we need to open it up underneath. This is our color scheme, but it's not the final.
Well, I was gonna
They
say,
already approved it.
on the one side, it has to be open for you to drive underneath and park, right? But the
Yeah.
south side presumably could be screened with a lattice or lattice and plantings or whatever, right?
I'm not sure. We have more developed elevations that closed up the bottom of these, are just open enough to allow you to get into the garage.
Right, okay.
And I can submit those to you if you'd like to see them.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other comments at this point? It is a public hearing. Who's this?
John Saraiva, I'm the general contractor. In regards to the recreational area, I just wanted to add that, based on just some rough calculations, we're at approximately 20%. And I'm sure Christina will fine tune that and give you the accurate square footage, but it is approximately 20%.
That lawn area.
Yeah,
Mhm.
between front and back. All right, thank you.
Thank you. It's a public hearing. If there's someone that wishes to speak on this, please, this would be the time. Yes, Mrs. Kane.
I'm Mavis Kane, representing the Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct. I guess we're the closest neighbors to this project. We appreciated when Christina responded to my invitation to talk to me and to Stephen. And I think we've come to a meeting of minds on the screening of the cars and so forth. The more I look at the building itself, that I appreciate what Javier has said, that we worked on screening the cars, but the building itself, it would be great if we could have a wonderful old oak tree like I have in my garden in front to screen the building a little bit more, because I think I pointed out at the last meeting that we worked so hard to keep the Keeper's House appropriate to the time and to a usable building. We're not trying to make it into a restoration, it's a rehabilitation, but still it is a certain Calvert Vaux design, and it comes as a shock to walk a little bit north and all of a sudden you see glass and what looks like metal to me. I guess it isn't all metal, but if we could have some kind of high screening of the building itself, and I do appreciate what Christina's done to make the lighting as unobtrusive as possible. I guess it's solar lighting, is it, Christina? I don't know. But certainly the look is what is terribly important to us. We're not so concerned with the number of units right now, but the more screening we can get of the building itself. We appreciate the variety of trees. I think some of our members pointed out we didn't want just a screening of evergreens, and I think there were letters written to the enterprise about that. So the variety of trees is important. And of course, our group is terribly involved in native species, and that I don't know enough about to comment, but the more screening of the building as well as the cars would make us happier, but we do appreciate the cooperative atmosphere that we have developed with Christina and her builder.
Mavis, would it ever be possible to put plantings on the aqueduct property?
Yes, Stephen, I'm glad you brought that up, because the three of us did discuss the scruffy little trees that are still on the aqueduct. That, I guess we didn't mention that, Christina, did we, that Stephen and you and I agreed that something has to be done with the property that belongs to the aqueduct there. There's scruffy, miserable little trees right there that may even be the kind that spread their roots underneath, I'm not sure. But yes, we have an agreement with Stephen Oaks to look after that, to try to do our part to keep it looking beautiful. So let's hope it will evolve.
Because I was just thinking that could be a place to put a tree that will grow larger over
Well,
time.
that's an idea, Stephen, yes. I guess you know also that we work very hard not to have trees on the aqueduct that spread.
I understand that, but there's a lot of space between the path and,
Fortunately, there is there, and that's a splendid idea that we could do our part by doing some planting there. That,
well, maybe you could get an assist from the developer on this project.
yeah, well, that's right, because tall trees are very expensive. I know I'm trying to have tall trees between my house and the new modern house on Colonial. I've offered to go halfway with that builder to have tall trees put in, and I know that's very expensive, so we're aware of that. But the more foliage we can get, the better, to keep this shock of the Calvert Row house and then suddenly this modern house.
Well, you might talk to Steve Oaks and have him part of this conversation to see what could be done there to help the screening that you're talking about.
I certainly will. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Another thought was, the walls, obviously the landscape consultant will advise on that, but if you were to have vines growing on that, I don't know, it looks like just ornamental plantings. You're building these stone walls, but if you had something growing up, because I think the change of height there from, you have about over 7 foot high wall, is that right, that's exposed, hiding the cars?
Good. In regards to any trees or plantings, we have absolutely no problem in having those discussions and moving ahead to do so. We totally agree that, the building should be screened and we have no problem with it.
Good, thank you. Anyone else want to be here this evening? Yes, Mr. Merrill?
Mike Merrill, 32 Walnut Street. Probably about 205 feet from the property, because we didn't have to get notice. But we can see it out the kitchen window. I did want to bring some things up because some things you or the developer have already covered. But the minor variances at the ZBA were approved on the presumption that that some of these issues associated with the variances would be covered by the planning board. That includes the similarity, dissimilarity, it includes the drainage. With that in mind, one of the things that gets created with having to do the various variances for the impervious surfaces is, I think it was 7,000 something square feet footprint on the building. To put that in context, our house is about 700 square feet on a lot that is, this lot is about a third wider and less than a third longer. So it's about 10 times the footprint on not that much more lot. What happens there, we're also talking about the buffer with the aqueduct. What we haven't mentioned is, there was a drawing of some trees in the front of the building and a discussion of the trees or shrubs or whatever they are on the side of the driveway. Usually the setbacks are there so that screening can be put in place by the owners themselves and not maintained for the property next door using their property to provide your screening. So if anybody, for example, thought that this was a different type of architecture than what's in the vision plan and might be more attractive or less obtrusive if there were some screening. You know, some of the questions are how do you maintain that screening, for example, along that driveway that is somebody else's property, especially if we're not just talking about while we're building the driveway, but also after we've plowed all of that salted snow off to the side, and if those shrubs or trees happen to die, who's responsible for putting the screening back up? So even if we draw all of this in, there are other questions of maintenance that would ordinarily be answered if you had your buffer on the property. You know, again, this is a little different style than most of the neighboring buildings, a little more modern, and most of the high volume residential units in the neighborhood are either set back more materially or are screened by substantial plantings, right? Right across the street, you have another large development that doesn't have as much concentration on the land, but has a lot more trees around, so you don't even notice that you've got a residential development across the street. The other item that I can't really tell how much it's been addressed in the existing plans. I know that there's essentially a catch pool for the drainage down at the bottom of the driveway, but part of the impervious surface, we're now going to have 15 feet straight downhill of driveway. So if, you know, for example, you've got runoff from the entire hill above it coming down Broadway, going down that driveway, are those basins sufficient to capture everything that's coming off of you know, the whole hill, including, you know, everything off of Clinton Avenue? I don't know what the solution to that would be, other than maybe putting in a speed hump at the top of the driveway, kind of like a priory. The other question is, where are you going to put the snow? Right, we've got a natural plowing zone that goes straight down to that three-sided wall, and doesn't look like it's very easy to address unless you're pulling it all back and essentially dumping it off either on the neighbors or in the back end somehow. But if you've got the wall there, you can't do that. So, you know, the questions of drainage, you know, become more material than just the property, because you get all the stuff that comes from up the hill, and we certainly know about that because we get all of the snow that comes down the street in our driveway. So there can be a lot extra. Same thing with the water. You know, it's not just what lands on the property. If we're opening all of this up, instead of having a little flat driveway for the single-family house, we're now going to have, you know, 15 feet of runway for all of that water to go down the hill. They have to go somewhere. I'm just hoping that all gets specifically addressed so that, you know, it doesn't end up either causing a drainage problem on the aqueduct or, you know, going over and into our backyard, because we have our own walls that we have to maintain. Thank you.
Thank you. That's, our engineer deals with those problems.
Yes.
Anyone else wish to speak on this? I hear C2 in the back.
Larry Blizzard, 12 Chestnut Street. Do they still teach architects to make arches? I haven't seen a single plan in the last year visited that has an arch in it. And I like arches. We have a large Italian tradition here at Dobbs Ferry, and one thing the Romans were good at was making arches. I think if some of these buildings that we're trying to hide by screening would have arches in them, we wouldn't miss the trees. We wouldn't need the trees so much. Why build a building and then try to hide the building? Put in some arches. the trees form arches. And when you have arches in the building, you don't need so many trees.
Thank you.
My name's Kevin Byrne, I live at 269 Broadway. First I want to say this is the most reasonable project I've seen come through in, however long I've been here. Looking down, and from what I've seen, I'll be looking onto the roof, and to piggyback that on the drainage, I don't know, I haven't seen the plans, but has there been thought of rain gardens and impervious roofing to assist in the drainage and make it somewhat more pleasant to look at while I'm cooking dinner and looking outside the window?
It's a good.
But I just think with any of the projects we have, those are things that should be happening because that's the technology we have now as an environmental engineer. These are things we implement, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
It's a good point.
Thank you.
Sandra Merrill, 32 Walnut Street. I sent an email to you earlier tonight, and I hope you received that and considered that. Again, I'm going to reiterate that I think this is extremely dissimilar, and it does affect us daily, what this view, so the building is dissimilar, and I ask you to consider that, please. That having been said, I did walk down to view, I would like to view the storm water management plans, and those were only available on 8.5 by 11 paper in the folder, so I would request that the public be able to access those in full size, and be able to review those on our own. I would also like to ask a question in our, in our Hans memo. It talks about that this board will be the lead agency. However, it does say that the involved and interested agencies were provided plans and other documents and given a deadline of March 14th to respond. I'd just like to know for the public what those agencies were that were noticed, that were have till the 14th.
Off the top of my head,
You can do it by email to me, Dwight,
Oh,
that's
okay.
fine. You don't need to give it tonight, but I would like to know that. That's all for tonight, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening. Michael Stein, President of Hudson Engineering. We're the engineers of record for the project. Just to address a few of the comments regarding stormwater. The stormwater management system that's been designed for the site has been designed to fully exfiltrate all the runoff from all the impervious areas from the site into the soil substrata, which is above, beyond what the village's code requires. The village's code requires a mitigation at least to the existing conditions. We're taking all the impervious area without any release and exfiltrating it. When entering into the site, this design of the front of the site with the driveway, the driveway pitches up before it starts pitching down, so it prevents any water from intruding into the site coming from the street. As far as green roofs, we've used them on numerous projects. However, for smaller projects of this scale and magnitude, they're not feasible to construct just based on the sheer size.
I would say, I don't know whether a green roof works or not, but I do think that the roof plan has to be thought about. I mean, what people were in that apartment buildings, I hadn't thought about that, but I thought he had a great point.
I've done a number of green roofs and I've done a couple of LEED projects, and they're beautiful, to see them, and we're going to discuss that because it's very attractive to look down on a green roof.
But I guess what I'm saying is, if it turns out you can't do a green roof, the roofscape nevertheless has to be a consideration of the design.
Yes.
Since
and,
people are gonna look down on it.
If it's something where you have big trees, that's expensive, but if you're just doing sedum, it's still,
And
I think
organizing.
it's feasible.
Right.
We'll talk about that. And I also just want to clarify a few things. The footprint of the building is 4,300 square feet. It's the impervious surfaces, that's 7,600.
Okay.
Could you talk about snow removal and also garbage collection and so forth?
Have we, did something, I'm just not sure which one of us addressed that. The snow removal, we usually have an area that we, for snow pile up, and I think we're gonna have to put some thought into that. And in the waste as well, there is a space on the lower level that we plan to have for common use, and we may have a waste area down there so that there's an intermediate area where people go down and put their waste. And we'll have to make sure that's included in our plans.
Can you provide the building department with a drive of this so they have it on a disc?
I just did.
You did? Okay, good.
Brian took it from me when I came in.
Good, thank you.
Just another question about the stormwater. Is it a different condition that just to the west of your drainage, your collection area, there's basically a dam? I mean, that's the Croton Aqueduct is a, it's a wall.
Yes, there's just a wall.
So is there enough infiltration to?
Yes, and that's specifically how the site has been designed.
Oh, okay.
Infiltrate that water.
Because it could be a big pond down there too.
And that's exactly what we would not want to see.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
We have one more question.
Yeah.
Good evening, Vicki Jones, 55 Grandview Avenue, Duxbury. I have to say this publicly, although I really do love Christina's architecture work. She's actually done some work inside my house. But I have to agree the building is excessively dissimilar almost to anything I've seen in Dobbs Ferry, especially on the main street. I just had to say that publicly because after the building's gonna be built, I'm gonna say, oh my God, how'd that building get here? But I've seen many, in the past, I've viewed many architectural review board meetings where people were about excessive dissimilar. And I realize it's a really weird spot because you've got an ugly gas station and not so cute house next to it. And then a huge apartment building, but it just it lacks the softness that could even make it look like it fit in a little bit. So I just had to say that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. I see somebody else back there. Well then, thank you. Thank you for your comments. I'm not sure where we are in terms of there's things that you still have to do, that you've committed to do in terms of the landscape plan and Lucille Munz and so on.
I have a quick question about if you could characterize the HRB comments as in this issue of excessive dissimilarity. Was there any response? You mentioned that you had changed the materials and had kind of less variation and more muted colors, but in terms of the forms themselves?
We discussed the idea that the building has a similar scale and proportions, 40 feet wide, the same as the original building. And I think there was this sort of consensus that it's, if you have the right massing and scale, then it can have a modern look and still feel comfortable. That was the consensus that the board had, that I felt they had. And we also have an owner who really feels that this is the direction he wants the building to have.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-up comment to Javier's question, because I was asking him. I would just, at the site, this is not totally your purveyance, but I do happen to relate my experience at the Architectural Review Board, and I do so respectfully that this board
I spoke up at that time in regards to the dissimilarity. I come from the Pacific Northwest. In and of itself, it can be a beautiful building. The materials which were discussed enormously, because I was at each meeting. It's not about what it is, because it's not that it's an ugly building itself, it's where it is. It's in our neighborhood. It's still, we're still a part, we're on Broadway, we're on Walnut, we're still a part of that downtown section in the vision plan, and this is dissimilar. And unfortunately, Michael was gone that night, because I'm pretty sure this wouldn't have happened had he been there. But the board members there, when I got up to speak pretty passionately, which you know that I can do, but still, I read the code to them. And I read a part of the code that applied to the HRB, and I read part of the vision plan. And the three gentlemen that were there, the two gentlemen who were there, one knew, I give him some leeway, and Ms. Shaw basically looked at me like I was crazy. And at the end, the member who was at the acting chair looked at me and said, I don't know what your problem is. I like modern architecture. And that was not what I was speaking to at all. I was speaking to our code, the AHRB's role in it, and the vision plan. And so I was extremely disappointed with the role of the board that night. And I just had to speak that in front of this board also. Thank you for your time.
They had been before that board on several occasions, and Michael was at several of those meetings, so, as you know, so. I think we're at the point where we could close the public hearing at this point.
We have to wait for the secra comments.
We have to wait for the secra?
Why don't we leave it open?
Okay.
And ultimately, the landscape, is that, I mean, I don't know if we
Yeah.
were,
Yeah.
do we expect that we'll see?
There'll be some revised plans, let's
All right, so,
just adjourn it to the next meeting.
okay, so adjourned? Move that we
Seconded.
adjourn the public hearing till next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's right.
There it is.
We could definitely get to this last one or not.
It's not gonna be a big discussion on it.
It's not? If I go home, I won't miss anything?
You can
Oh,
watch
I
it
would
on-
never say
you
that,
can-
Peggy.
You can watch it on
Yeah.
TV.
You will
You
miss.
know, we
We
read all your emails, so send us an
Read them
email.
all?
Sure, yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not gonna decide anything?
No.
Item number 4 on the agenda, pre-submission conference for site plan review for proposed single-family residence on property located on Lot 3 of 548 Broadway. Is anybody here on this? Yes. Oh, it's you, okay. This really can't be lot 3 of that because it's not subdivided, is it?
We are three separate, well, let me introduce myself, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's Adam Weinstein, I'm the law firm of Hoffman, Cordell and Weinstein, and with me is our engineer, George Vermont. My understanding is that this is composed of three separate lots that were three tax lots. We're here.
3 building lots, 3 legal building lots?
That is my understanding based on my client's discussion with Mr. Cook. I was not involved in those, but that is my understanding.
Adam, over here, Derek's. Mr. Chairman, we spoke, Adam and I the other day, there's one thing I think we need, to see if there needs to be a subdivision. Do you know if there's a filed plat with the 3 lots in the county clerk's office? That's what I think we need to investigate to see if there's 3 zoning lots currently, or whether there needs to be a subdivision of it. I understand at one point there may have been 1 tax lot or more than 1 tax lot, but I'm not concerned about tax lots, I'm concerned about zoning. I understand there may be enough land for 3, and maybe there's a plat filed, but we need to see that, I think. So maybe if you guys could do some investigation on that.
We can do investigation on it, certainly.
Great.
I'm not conceding that we need a plat for
Right.
this to be 3 separate lots. I think they were historically 3 tax lots, and I do think they each comply. Having having said that, what we believed we were here for tonight was to just present very briefly, pre-submission conference, what we were talking about, which is a conforming house, assuming we ultimately move forward that it's a separate lot, on a conforming lot, as shown in the plans, complies with all zoning requirements. We'll take the utilities from the existing utilities in Route 9, and what we hoped was to move in the direction of a public hearing. This is, we believe, again, if it is a single lot, we believe that under your code, it is an action that requires no environmental review. It's effectively a type 2 action. If it's a subdivision, we're talking obviously some differences here. And the only other thing I would say is the client has prepared, or is in the process of preparing, some more advanced plans, which include a utility plan and include some landscaping and a little more detail based on his discussions with Mr. Cook and Mr. Conlon.
Fine. Well, if there's things to present tonight, we would be interested to see it. We have one plan.
That is all we have. I do not have the file electronically, and I apologize. I do have it on paper if you'd like me to go into what we're proposing in a little greater detail. I know it may be difficult to see.
Here's an easel.
Is that okay if I bring it over here? This is the really very simple plan. The way it's set up right now is that the front of the residence will be facing south, as is the residence to the north right now. That's off the property for which my client's a contract ND. The driveway comes in off Route 9. It is actually, a portion of it will be on the lot to the south. There is an easement, or will be an easement, to allow that sort of access. And down the road, if the lot to the south gets developed, this wall that's shown here would be taken out and would be taken from a common driveway to minimize the number of curb cuts. The house is set back a little over 25 feet from the right-of-way of Route 9, 10 feet on each side from the side yard, and something like 45 feet from the rear. It is a 3-floor building. It's actually 2 stories with a basement that will be partially finished and also accommodate the garage. And I don't have that much more to say about it. You do have the elevations, or you should have the elevations, which are very traditional colonial style elevations.
We don't have.
No, we
that.
just got one
We
drawing.
don't. The only thing we have is this plan. We have that. We have this.
Okay, so this is a little bit updated. Has some landscape plan, but this is the house.
We don't have that.
We haven't seen this.
I would say one thing that we are always concerned about on a building like this facing on a major street. This is on a state road, a very busy state road. And to have cars going in and out from there creates potential problems, because there's no side to it. The road is everything there is. There's no shoulder on that road at all.
I'm familiar with the location. I guess the question would be, we know we have to get the DOT sign off on a curb cut permit here. Among other things, we also have to get their sign off in order to connect to the utilities, so that's presumably something we would anticipate having to address with them and get that as a condition for what we require. The architectural plans, which I've been told were submitted, as you can see, are very traditional. The side facing Route 9 will have the two garage doors, the stone facing, and then the shakes. This front facade is facing south, and it carries through the same pattern. What I have been saying before, or I believe I did say before, is it's 2 stories above the ground, and this is the basement, which will be above ground on the east side.
Chairman, you may want to, I know there's 3 potential lots here early on. I'm not sure if these documents show sort of how the other 2 lots would relate in terms of a house on each of those lots to Route 9, to this house, how they're facing, which way they're looking. I think that may be something that you need to look at from a planning, to look at one house in the back in here, maybe.
Right.
You may want to look at, see how generally they're going to lay out.
And also see how the driveways are going to work.
Exactly.
There is on the plans that have been developed, post what was given to you, the location of the house shown on lot 2, which is next to it to the south. The house that is there currently, which occupies the whole piece of property, is ultimately going to be taken down, assuming they get approval down the road from your board, and the intent would be to develop 3 lots. At this point, I think those are only in the conceptual stage.
But you could show how they would be laid out and where they,
Yes.
egress would be and so on.
Yes, there wouldn't be any sort of detail.
This is the one.
Right, right.
We could show the footprint
Right.
and access,
Right.
if that would, no landscaping, but just so you can see the relationship.
Right,
Gotcha.
right, right.
Just a quick, I'm sure you said it, but the driveway, there's an existing easement for that curb cut, or that is a new curb cut?
Well, the curb cut we would need to get, the curb cut itself, we need to get approval from DOT to go into the right of way and for a new curb cut.
Because they don't.
Goal would be though, right now, this driveway is located half on what we believe is lot 3 and a portion on lot 2, so that this property would have an easement agreement allowing part of the driveway to be on lot 2, and ultimately there would be an easement, a cross easement, so that when lot 2 is developed, this driveway can be a common driveway, so we'll only have one curb cut there for the 2 homes.
Would it make more sense to have all 3 homes access from McClellan? I mean, often shared driveways are sort of a problem.
Well, that would also be a shared drive.
All right.
Presumably
Yeah, right.
across.
Yeah.
Super shared.
Yeah, 3 houses.
Yeah, I mean, the current house is accessed from McClellan, as you know.
Right, and it says here paved drive, so why isn't that being used as the access to get to this rather than Broadway?
I will raise the issue as one of the issues to raise with the client. And one of the things, again, we had hoped was to get your input to move this forward.
Because you wouldn't have to talk to DOT about the curb cut out here then, right?
The existing house is on 2 lots now?
That's correct.
Straddling the first 2, I guess.
Yes, it doesn't touch the lot we're talking about developing lot 3, but it straddles, you're correct, across lots 1 and 2.
If the lot that we're discussing was built on, is there enough setback for the existing house?
Yes, I believe that's the case, because the side yard here is 10 feet. You can see it, and this is substantially more from the edge of the existing home to the common property line. So
When you look at it, when you go and look at it, which I have, it doesn't, 50 feet isn't that wide, I guess.
No, but it
No,
meets,
it's not.
it meets the 10 feet and 20 total.
Yeah, the building envelope is shown on here, and it goes, the house itself forms the front part of the building envelope, and then there's some space in the back.
Now, you have a proposed retaining wall just to the right of the driveway, but you just indicated that there's another portion of the drive that would go to the right, is that right?
That's correct. My understanding, and I'm not an engineer, is that would be what would be the equivalent of what is called a rubble wall, and when the adjoining lot
I
as
see.
well.
Mm.
But since they're not being built at the same time.
Also, just to bring up our favorite, like, greatest hits from the past. What's the story with the sky exposure plane in this district? Does it, I don't remember if it,
It applies.
Yeah, it applies.
so you need to show your, I think there are two key things here. One is the chair's comment, Javier's comment, that you should lay out the whole, that we should see how you imagine the whole thing might ultimately be developed. And then also, I guess the sky exposure plane needs to be, do you know about that? It's one of our favorite things. It's so much fun.
Sitting here today, having just gotten involved, I did not know it applied.
Oh, it's
Portion
great.
of F6.
It's great. Do you have a kid in high school?
Yeah,
Good at
I'm
math?
a lawyer. If I were good at math, I'd probably be doing what I do.
Geometry.
You need a protractor.
Looking forward to that. Actually, the sky exposure plane, this is actually the kind of condition where it actually is, there's been a lot of fighting about where it's, but this is actually exactly the condition where it's supposed to be used. It's a thing that establishes an envelope relative to the other buildings around it. My guess is you're well within it, but I'm just saying it's.
I believe it's on the drawings that you don't have that were just handed up to you. They're triangular angles that are going.
I gave it to them.
Okay, great.
It doesn't matter.
My understanding is
They comply.
with it, but
Yeah.
I certainly have not been involved in the calculations myself.
Was that, I know we discussed some revisions, did those actually get passed?
No,
45 degrees?
That's right. That has not been passed yet?
no.
Okay.
That's all part of this
all-
bundle of
Okay.
recommendations, right, that the board is yet to act on.
That's right.
So I guess the question for you is where do we proceed? I have your questions on the issue of the subdivision plat, on the issue of showing you at least conceptually where we envision the other homes in the driveway. And if the sky massing plan doesn't exist, we will give it to you. And I'm fairly certain it is on
Okay.
the architectural plans we've been given tonight.
And if it is feasible to show a method of getting into the three properties from not
McClellan.
Broadway, from
I
McClellan,
will raise that with.
I think that would be appreciated.
Does that exist on other properties? I mean, these driveways right onto, I mean, where's the nearest,
The adjacent house gets
has the same?
access from McClellan.
Yes.
No. from
No,
this
no,
side.
I'm sorry, is
The
there,
existing house.
what other houses in this area have this driveway onto Broadway? Any,
It's the one right next door, unfortunately.
only
It
this
also
one
has
down
a
here?
curb cut right under Broadway.
Yeah.
And the garage is there, everything's similar to this one?
Well, yeah.
That's right, okay. I've been to the site.
Dwight, what's having a garage entrance facing Broadway? Just has to be screened, or, I mean, it's, seems like.
Probably can't screen. I think most of the issues on these, there's a lot of issues when you're going out onto a state highway like, but line of sight to make sure that you can pull out safely because you can see what's coming and going on Route 9. You may want to restrict certain turns, that kind of stuff. The DOT gets into that, but we also get into it. But I don't think there's any restriction on pulling right into a garage from facing.
I see they had a
You probably
turn.
want to check the residential design guidelines, because they don't recommend facing front, going forward into it. I think it goes around the side.
But
Is that right?
it is the side, I mean, the
You might
facade
want
of
to
the
make the
building
driveway
is.
like banked, like an Indy 500, so that it's gonna be right on.
This driveway actually is not, there's not that much grading to get in.
You could have a similar one.
No, he's
Start at
saying,
the back of your property.
There also is
Hit the
a
gas.
planting right at the edge of the
but
right of way. that will
the
be
design of the house is
landscaped.
that the facade is actually facing the other house, it's not facing Broadway. you're
That is
saying.
correct.
So the facade is not facing Broadway, it's the garage,
That's
facing
correct.
Broadway.
So like the side of the house is facing Broadway.
Right.
But the applicant may want to, or the board may want to suggest like you said, going from the other two properties or a single property to the back and trying to enter to the back, maybe through easements on the other property.
It would be really, I think it would make a lot of sense.
For all three properties.
For all
Yeah.
three properties.
You're talking about off the common.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can
And
make
then
all
an
three.
easement for that.
Yeah, if indeed they are three, then two would grant the easement, third, first, second, or third, first, so.
Understood.
And that becomes a private road at a certain point, does it?
Well, it wouldn't.
Wouldn't be
It could be a
dedicated.
common driveway.
I think it's like this.
Okay.
A long.
A long common, well, it's not that long, it's only
Well, I-
15 feet long.
Three house.
I think we need to work out the issue of the subdivision, but I think you need to submit these things for the next meeting, have another pre-submission.
Another pre-submit, yeah, I don't.
Very good.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
They're all over here.
One little comment is the distance to the nearest street, I don't see on this plan here.
I'm sorry.
The distance from your driveway, your proposed curb cut to the nearest corner.
To the common.
Exactly, right, so I think,
It's about 100 feet, because it's 250s, I suppose.
Yeah.
and so there must be a,
Approximately, it's going to be, I think, yeah, just about that, just about exactly that.
and that's,
So we will get you the number.
okay.
One other thing, you may want to get some feedback from the DOT sooner than later, and submit, have a sit-down or preliminary set of plans sent to them. Because they might say, this is really not feasible at all. You wouldn't want to go down that path. Can't speak for the DOT.
I know, I understand.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 5 on the agenda is another pre-submission conference for subdivision application for 2 lots for the proposed single-family residence on property located at 74 Maple and DeVoe Street.
Oh, they were here before. They wanted this one, they want to access one from that alley in the middle of the block. It continues, it goes.
Good evening. My name is Michael Stein, President of Hudson Engineering, we're the engineers of record for the project. We're here this evening for a pre-submission conference on a 2-lot subdivision at 74 Maple. It's my understanding, and unfortunately, the project architect who had submitted a few months ago, he was unable to make it this evening. However, it is my understanding that, I guess about 4 months ago, they had submitted an application to construct to keep the existing single-family house and build a 2-family house on the side. The 3-family are permitted based upon the zoning and based upon the square footage. I guess suggestions remain to look into possibly subdividing the lot and creating 2 separate properties. Therefore, we had gone back with the footprint provided by the architect in the existing dwelling, and we're looking at the existing lot, again, which is fronting on Maple, and the second lot would be fronting on DeVoe. The two properties, lot 1, again, the existing house, would require a lot area of 3,800 square feet approximately, where 5,000 is required. Therefore, an approximate 1,200 square foot variance would be required. A lot width of 22 feet would be required for a variance. A lot depth variance of 24.5 feet. And the front and side setbacks would also require variances. However, those are both existing nonconformity. The one existing side yard setback would still need a variance regardless of it being existing non-conforming because the second floor addition is being put onto the rear of the building. On lot 2, a variance for the lot area of approximately 1,200 square feet would be required. Same thing, lot width 22 feet and lot depth of 25.5 feet per variance. Based upon the footprint that was being proposed, 5-foot front yard setback and both side and rear yard setback variances will be required as long as building coverage and impervious area coverage. As part of investigating and looking into the subdivision, we had actually looked at the neighborhood. Specifically of the houses all within the block between Maple and DeVoe with Storm on the left. Of those properties, there were only 6 properties that, excluding the property of the application, there's only 6 properties that actually conform 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 with respect to lot area. All the other properties are deficient with as far as lot area. We had also looked into the square footages. Again, excluding the application, applicant's property, there are 10 properties which are larger than the application, and there are 11 properties which are smaller, which means these 2 properties going and being subdivided would actually fall exactly within the median. So they'd fall into the exact middle point of what the square footage would be on the street. We're here this evening looking for some guidance from the board and some direction to proceed.
Well, I think they were here, you were here once before.
That's correct. We actually suggested this.
Hmm?
We suggested this.
Yeah.
What else?
And-
NDR 1A.
To make the 2.
And you, I think the applicant has also been to the zoning board and
Yeah.
perhaps directed back here for some guidance.
Do you have this, what you just stated in a tabular analysis in any way? In other words, the number, of these grouping.
Variances?
No, sorry, I saw the variances here. Basically, the adjacent properties, or this, we'll call this neighborhood, how many fall, in terms of the lot coverage and number of houses and so forth?
Yes, we didn't extend to giving into lot coverage or to setbacks. We can definitely look into that. I mean, we were first looking at it preliminarily as lot areas and where it's developed. But if you look at, some of the properties where the houses are extraordinarily large in comparison to what the footprints of the lots are,
This is like
they do take up the majority of the properties.
No, so it's basically that, what you're saying, just in a table form, I think it would help a little bit. Okay.
It would also be good to see an elevation of from each street for like the distance that you're more or less showing on this plan. The streetscape, just to kind of see.
I'll see what we can put together.
Yeah, or take a photo, do a photo montage thing and drop your profile into it.
On both sides of the street, there would be helpful.
How about the entire village?
I don't know about.
So, sorry, just going back to this drawing here. So of the houses on DeVoe, how many are residential? How many are just accessory? In other words, how many are to be?
These are all dwellings, because they're separate addresses going through, looking at Western GIS. They all have each individual address. So even though these are much smaller lots, they have their own individual address.
So the number of houses on DeVoe, on a shared lot, how many of them are there? You know what I'm saying, where you have a...
Where you have
How many pre-existing conditions exist that match what you are proposing?
8 along the top.
Have something similar to what you're proposing?
Correct.
Okay.
And on Maple and the other side too, because we're really looking at both streets.
And there's 6 along Maple.
Do you know if that part, not that this is well, never mind, it's a waste. Never mind.
I think the board is interested in seeing if there is a reasonable solution to this problem, given the way this neighborhood was originally cut up into smaller lots that are now non-conforming. It's not unreasonable to think that if this lot was split into two pieces, that it could support two houses that would be consistent with the neighborhood and not out of scale or inappropriate. So, speaking, at least for myself, I think, we're interested in pursuing this to see if we can find something that makes sense for the applicant and for the neighborhood and the village.
I would agree with that.
We'll work on getting some of the tabulated information together, and we'll try to work on getting some streetscapes. Kind of try to do the photo montage, and
Or you could draw out, I mean, I don't
unless
know.
I can try to demonstrate my iPhone and see if I can make that
I
work.
think a lot will have to do with just the massing size of the houses and how they relate to the other houses.
Yeah, I mean, the one house is existing, right? So that
Yes.
that is what it
This one
is, I
house
think.
existing, So
Yeah.
it may really not have an effect on Maple, it's that I think is really playing more into,
I think it's really a question, is the proposed house consistent with the scale of the houses on this size lot in this neighborhood, and not something that looks outsized?
Yeah, and the other thing would be, but it looks, I guess it's not clear to me from this drawing, but this is one of those places where kind of prevailing setback would be
Exactly.
Right.
and important. It looks pretty, it looks like along Maple, it looks like it's pretty uniform. And I don't know if are those setbacks conforming, or are those houses all technically to?
those will be non-conforming.
Huh?
The houses along Maple will all be non-conforming, they are 20-foot setback requirement, and
So again, this might be a case where you may want to add, you may want it to be closer. You want it to relate properly to its neighbors, which may mean that may be yet another variance that you want, rather than setting it back to code and having it somehow break the rhythm of the street.
understood.
Same thing on the other side.
We'll include all that in a tabulated form, just going through between lot areas and some of the other comparisons, just at least to the maximum extent possible.
That would be helpful. That'd be very helpful.
In part because this is Western Japan GIS mapping, so if there is going to be a level of error in some of the computations.
Yeah.
But I think more than the usual case, that's going to be critical to our decision. And my understanding is that eventually, if we go further, that you would need to go back to the zoning board, and I suspect it would be important to them also.
Okay, not a problem.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest to the board that for every one that you got a variance for side, front, and you're in the tabulation, that's what you should be showing the board, so that you can compare all the properties on the street and everything.
Right, that's exactly where we'll be going through.
So,
Now, can you just talk about parking?
I'm sorry.
Off-street?
The existing parking,
From my voice.
Pile up.
Parking deck.
It's basically a parking garage.
the existing parking, or the parking for the existing house would basically remain the same, with slightly modified, reduced, but it would still have space for two parking spaces. While there is an existing driveway that comes into the site on this side, that'll mean that we're actually not reducing any parking on the street, because we already have a curb cut here accessing off the street. But we have a two-car garage inside of the building here. So we have the space for the two vehicles to be able to park.
And this is a single-family home you're proposing, right?
I believe two families.
Two families.
Yeah.
And that's the required parking, is 2 cars?
I'll have to double check.
And then the access going, getting into the side of the building or something, figure that out. It's underneath, you got parking.
Yes, this comes around and goes, it's
I got
underneath.
you, okay.
So, and I just want to double check the architect's plan, because it could be that they're tandem spaces, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't seen architecturals for the building yet.
Just procedurally, I know they mentioned you have to go back to the ZBA. Before this board can act, you'll have to go to the ZBA.
Okay, so it's not a referral from this board to ZBA, we have to.
No, I think what happened was you created lots that are substandard.
Correct.
So they can't grant a subdivision for substandard lots, and the zoning board will be granting variances if they do for lots that don't really exist, but it's a little bit of chicken and the egg, but you have to do that first. You have to get the variances first, but I think the thought process was is that the zoning board wanted to hear from the planning board if this was something that's
Supportable.
even possible. And if, I think that's what they're doing now, so just so you know,
Okay.
procedurally.
I think we'll be coming back, I guess, with the additional information to present, and I don't know if we get a recommendation from here to the ZBAs with either positive or negative, or.
Sort of, yeah, something like that.
Okay.
We'll figure out the logistics.
I would add in, while you're doing all this data collection, which are one and what are two-family or three-family houses in there too. And it'd be good to have a breakout in that same area that you're looking at, what are the breakup between.
Yeah, that's important.
Because
Are
the
we
question might
talking-
be, why
But he's
shouldn't there just
proposing
be
two one-family.
an additional
No,
one-family
it's
house,
two.
not two? So we would like to look at the data on one,
Is the existing house a one-family house?
Yes,
So the new house is proposed to be two-family?
that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, that would be helpful to know what, now there's a question, legal two-family and two-family, but to the extent that you can do that, it would be helpful to know what's happening on those two streets.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
The last item, item number 6, and it's not the last item, is pre-submission conference for site plan review for proposed multifamily residential buildings, I think, and garage and parking area on property located at 155 Beacon Hill Drive. Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad.
The house is heavily
Yeah.
surrounded by Indians.
Yeah.
Architect for a study for potential residential development. This is located on the upper end of Beacon Hill Drive. I don't know if you all know this building, it's a castle. And it's in a multi-residential FNF4 zone. And this idea is to add units, but in a way that we're going to meet the zoning code with lot coverage, pervious surface coverage, setbacks, and number of units. The existing building is a 3-story stone building that has 12 units right now. And this is showing an idea of adding 21 more units. And what we want to do is try to have them flank the original building so that we have the same grand entrance symmetry, seen from the view when you come into the entry here, and tuck the cars into garages under the buildings. This is a plan that shows that we would have another entrance off of Beacon Hill Drive into an underground garage, or garage at the basement level of this building. And then over here, we have some inside the building, some outdoors. And as little as possible exposed in the front of the building. Because, if the building is in disrepair, but it will, be renovated as part of this development, and it is very special because it has some very nice details, and I'll show you that in a minute. This is schematic floor plans showing the potential of having 21 2-bedroom units, and idea or concept is that the new buildings will be done in stone and pick up on a lot of the themes that are in this, that this building has. And we're here today just to see if we can get your response, or any kind of comments about this idea. I also have some photographs of the neighboring properties. Most of this neighborhood is pretty dense, multi-family residential apartments, and some houses that are not next to it, but the castle, the government called the castle, is surrounded by apartment buildings that are about 2 stories high, most of them. This is typical of that neighborhood. This is, this is, when you come up here, this is fair level. We don't have a topographic survey yet, but you come up and there's a bit of a hill here, and you want to take advantage of the hills so that we could get a driveway directly into a garage underneath the buildings on the side.
You may have said this, Christina, but this complies with zoning?
Yes, with all the setbacks, 10-foot front yard, 30-foot rear yard, 10-foot side yards, lot coverage is maximum 40%, we're at 33%, and the development coverage is 60%, and we're just under that.
Thank you.
What is the total number of proposed units?
21.
And you have some distances of 8 feet to the existing building?
To the existing building. On the survey, there is the garage is right up very close to the building.
No, I mean, your new building looks like you're coming within 3 feet of the back corner of the building there, is it?
No, it's 30, this is 30
No, no.
I think he's talking about the existing building, the castle.
Between the castle and
And
your
the new
new
construction.
building.
Right there.
I mean, you could
Oh,
prob-
yes, yes. We will, we're gonna look at how we're gonna make this work, because we might actually take the porch and have it connect to the unit, so there's like a porch that surrounds the building and allows walking space around the building and to common areas.
Sid, what zone are you in?
MF4.
MF4.
Do you know a little bit about the history of the house, of the castle?
I am getting information on it. This was actually a residence, and it was part of a really huge estate. The original building was, the estate building was torn down. And the bill, I don't know when it was converted into apartments, but they're really interesting apartments. They have a lot of wood detail, panel detail inside.
So it might have been converted in the 20s or something?
Yeah, I think so, and they're
18.
1870. Yeah, I think the building dates in 70, but converted into apartments, do you know when?
Not sure.
Uh-huh. And, you know, I would like to really make sure when we design the buildings that we really use the castle as a reference in many ways. We might even have some angular bays and porches, stone walls.
Yeah, I think the problem is that the building, for it to kind of like be what it is, I think needs to some extent, sit in with space around it. And I guess when I look at the site, if you go back to your site plan, it looks like it's sort of suffocating the building. So I think the fact that you're like maintaining this one view from the front, I guess, is like an okay gesture, I guess. But I feel like it's gonna feel like these things that are kind of glomming onto it are too close. So I'm gonna play designer here for a second and just tell you what I would.
Christina?
I think the way to think about the site, I would say, is to think of it more like a sort of campus, in which case.
Microphone.
Would be to try to think of this more as like a campus, where and that the buildings, rather than sort of trapping this thing, that you would actually try to get probably maybe a building up here, maybe a building here, maybe there is a way to do a different kind of building. I mean, one of the problems I have is that you're sort of stamping out this, I realize this is a concept level plan, you're sort of stamping out the same thing as you go around the building. I think probably they should be 2 or 3 different building types. And one could be sort of up here, maybe one is here. They make some kind of space between them and the new building, and maybe there is another way to get another building back here. But I think the kind of what's missing is the same, it's kind of approach to the landscape that the building sits in. And I think just like building this close to it, or in these many ways, in this way is going to just take away from that.
I don't mind this one, it's this one.
I really appreciate what you
This
just
one's
said,
fine, you
and
could just move it back.
we have actually a lot of ideas in mind. We're only showing one very simple concept scheme, and these are all possibilities. I really like that idea of the canvas, because, you know, this was just one potential idea, and we're definitely gonna explore these, and we only have one standard unit only because we're just here today to see if you feel this is feasible, and then we're gonna, you know, just get your input, and then we're gonna start to really study this, see if we can do what we can to really make this building, bring it back to its former glory, but not choke it. I like those ideas, so we'll definitely look into that.
Christi, and that plan, those are single stories? The new construction would be single or two-story?
There's 3, but, you know.
3-story, you
We
said?
also don't have a topographic survey yet, and this is, right here is a Rapak property. And the hill just rises up right here, and then goes down over here. So, you know, we could have different heights of buildings, we could have, and I'll just kind of try to go back to those days when,
Is it too early for a site?
you had a 3-story.
No, I think it's a good idea. I should have looked.
Wraparound porch.
I'm sorry, you said those would be 3 stories, the new construction?
These are 3.
Okay.
These are all
And this, the land drops away?
3, right here.
Okay.
Which makes it easy to put the garage underneath there.
Christina, do you ever build like for your, and I really like your work, and I think like you seem to be, I think what you presented here is really good. But do you ever build like physical models
Yes,
of the sites?
I have, yes.
Because I would say this would be,
Definitely,
it would be, you know, I mean, to have, you know, do
yeah.
the topo out of chipboard or whatever it is to kind of represent it and to
Yeah.
place this building. And I think it's one of those things where really the placement of a bunch of structures on here is
Yeah, it's funny, we try to do that, 3D modeling.
well, I was thinking of a physical model
But-
personally, but if you,
No,
but a digital model.
No,
would
we've
be-
done a lot of physical model, but the 3D modeling is well, I don't think it's that easy to get the topography right, but we should probably look at that, because the level area is really just right here. You know,
Yeah,
it goes up and it goes down.
yeah. I think this is like 50% landscape campus design, 50% architecture design. The other thing is, if you drive up there,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of landscaping between the edge of Beacon Hill and,
Yeah.
you know, it's
There is,
it's
yeah.
quite dense.
Yeah.
And here, I think I think it would really change the character of the road to have your new buildings push so hard up against the edge of Beacon Drive. It's quite well.
Right there on this side, it's really in front of the building, but yeah, you don't even see the building from the road. You have to go all the way up and in.
But you were gonna suggest,
Yeah.
that,
I think maybe sooner than later, it'd be helpful for the board to do a site visit so that we can actually walk the property and get a real feel for it, because this is one that doesn't work on paper.
I think that's true. It's
Well,
because
we'll
of
have
the
to do
topography
3D
and
modeling,
everything.
of course.
Huh?
And we'll have to do 3D modeling and maybe physical, but, yeah, it's a special, very special building and site, but, you know, if, would be nice, one reason for the number of units is to allow, to be able to renovate the old building. So,
Maybe I'll push out some date, I'm away for a couple of weeks, but I can push out some dates.
Just an email?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I think it'd be good. And we can all go up on our own also,
Yeah,
and walk around.
that's true.
would our next step be to do a formal submission, do you think?
I think it'd be
When's the
great if,
date?
I think it'd be great if you could
Yes.
come back with several, 3 or 4 alternative,
Absolutely.
Sure. Concept plans, site plans.
I mean, to the issue of, rear yard and front yard, you're sort of on a corner lot. I don't know, can you explain the easement, this curve here? It seems to go off Beacon Hill and,
That's the existing easement that there is now to get to the,
Yeah. I've got to get some more information about that myself. It's a little confusing because it feels like the road continues, but it doesn't. It's some
But it
kind of
doesn't.
a easement to allow access, but we'll get more information on that.
What's the thought process on these rentals proposed?
I think there will probably be condominiums.
The current building a rental though?
Yes, the rentals.
sorry, what's the ratio of parking on these?
Well, the parking that we have,
I mean, you're showing 46 total indoor and outdoor parking spaces, so
we have,
to 33 total units.
we need for 33 units total, 12 in the old
Required would be
building.
45 and a half.
Oh, I didn't see
21
that. Sorry.
additional.
Oh, page
We
2.
will require, the code requires 46 spaces, and that's what I'm showing.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I don't know if we can go much further tonight, I mean, it's very helpful, but,
I mean, ultimately, this is going to require a full environmental impact and study and traffic and parking, everything.
require what
Right.
it will, yeah. Maybe I can send out to the board and to you some dates for a site visit.
That'd be great.
and we'd have to notice it.
Yeah, we'll have to notice.
I'll notice, I'll let somebody know when. It'll probably be a couple of weeks, and I'm gonna be away. Not that that's critical.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, so, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
See you next time.
The last item on our agenda is a continuation of the discussion of the MDR2 zone led by Mr. In a short discussion again
Short
this
discussion.
evening. We're just trying to move this along slowly.
Yeah, last we spoke, we looked at the setbacks for the front yard and the maximum lot coverage. And the discussion was, what does it take to get to some percent of compliance? And that's what we did for you on the box to the right.
Right.
And for front yard setback, to get 15 feet, 34, roughly 35%, 10 feet, 50%, almost 50% if you don't comply. At 5 feet, 67%, and at 2 feet, 86% of all the properties become compliant. So, you know, you can start to choose where you want to draw the line, at 5 feet, at 2 feet. And then the same thing for maximum coverage for the building. Starts out at, existing is 41% is compliant, and when you move the percentage up to 35%, 70, 40, 86, 45, 95. So by lot coverage, it seems like it wants to be 45% to get 95% compliant. And the same thing with front yard setback, it seems to want to trend towards 2 feet.
Some of them are right in line, right?
So,
If we go to no, if we go to
No, yeah,
no, you think we'll hit 100?
Dwight, what do you, I'd like to hear your comments about this.
Yeah, glad that George, I had much more complicated thoughts on this, but anyway, I'm glad George kind of narrowed it down to just
Yeah,
a
it's
couple
very
things.
helpful.
Yeah, it's very helpful, thank you, George.
No, it is.
It
It
is.
is, I think if you, one of the things, sometimes we have these big projects of looking at the whole design guidelines for the Old Croton Aqueduct or anything, and we start looking at MDR2 thinking, you know, this is not working quite right as a transitional zone, and that all spun out of looking at 75 Main. And so what is the existing conditions and where are the problems? And clearly, I think George's chart just highlights it for you. There's a 20-foot setback in that area, about, you know, 30, what'd you come up with, 15% or something? 34% complied with it. That's evidence that that's the wrong guideline for that area, because you wanted at least 50%, and that's bad. So now you have like 34%. And then,
Plus these buildings are
I know, right up against
the
the
last
sidewalks.
century or something, aren't they? The 20s or something.
That was the other thing I was thinking, it's a transitional zone, but there's a character to that area. It's not so simple that, okay, it's gonna support the downtown zones, or it's a transition that you can have more stuff, and then you get to the more pure residential areas, or areas that are more protected with residential zoning. There's something about the area that needs its own protection, I think, so.
Well, I think it's the existing individual buildings all together that make the zone interesting. The fact there is some variation among them. And so you can't zone for something like that, really.
But I thought in the end, I think this is simple, maybe, we, just because we called it a transitional zone, leave the label aside for a minute, and just what is that area? That's the MDR2, so we should probably change the front yard setback requirement. We probably need the lot coverage to be adjusted. I think the 45% is right. I think you could put, everything in the front yard should be based on what the common elements are along the block. Maybe not have any particular
That,
2 feet.
Right,
I was gonna say, I
Just
think that's
say-
better,
yeah,
it's
just-
just do a prevailing.
Yeah, prevailing setback. And then there's, so we're jumping to what I think next month. These 2 things we might be ready to make a recommendation on. And then I think there's a couple of uses that are allowed in the MDR2 zone that we should take a closer look at and either modify them, or in one case, maybe knock it out. Maybe we don't want, apartment complexes in that zone. Just looking at it, say, sometimes you think, oh, well, that's kind of a good idea, but then somebody looks at it and says, maybe I can assemble a few parcels here, and suddenly you got something that you don't want at all. So maybe we don't want apartment complexes, and maybe off-street parking structures or surface parking lots are something we want as a non-accessory use, something that could be a permitted use period. But then how do you set them up and so that they really don't mess up the residential character of this? So, and I didn't have a good answer to that, other than to knock it out as a use might be wrong, because there's always gonna be a demand for parking. Can it be accommodated here somewhere? Maybe. So how to do it and how to, so to me, there's just like 1, 2, 3, 4 things. Get recommendations off to the board of trustees, and then the bigger stuff we're looking at.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I'm looking at number of stories, it says 3 now. I guess, is that what's in the code now?
Yes.
And I don't know what existing is, but what makes that street interesting is the varied. I mean, I wouldn't want them all to be 3, there's some nice little 2-story.
1-story too.
Structures and 1-story, and so.
That's a maximum usually when you do the 3 stories, so I gotta look.
Yeah. But.
Yeah. I looked at the stories and I thought we didn't need to change it based
Well,
on.
maybe we don't. It's just that I would hate to see all the little ones knocked down and all made up to 3 stories. I mean,
That could happen.
that's
what
my
happens.
point. That's my point.
And what to protect that on.
Yeah, so, why don't we just landmark the whole street and get it over with?
But the process to deal with those, the buildings on DeVoe and Maple, I think that's pretty successful. I mean, you just look at the prevailing, look along the street and the setbacks and make a reasonable
Yeah,
judgment.
well, we'll see if we can get there. I mean, that's, I think so.
It's a good tool that you put in your ordinance. I don't think, I've worked in other places that don't have that flexibility to say it's 20-foot setback or what the prevailing is. I think whoever looked at that really was paying attention to the character of the village and knowing that this is a tool that is appropriate for here. So.
The people on the land use committee.
Oh, might be those people.
Now, is this the only NDR2 zone in the village?
Yes. Yeah.
Palisade Street, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. So it doesn't, we don't have to worry about it affecting someplace else.
Right.
Thank you.
The MDR1 zone worries me because there are so many MDR1 zones. I mean, I remember I did that survey, and they're really different from each other. Some of them are really different from each other. I mean, like there should maybe one DR1A or one B.
We did think of that,
I mean,
NDR1A.
but it takes more granular view of it, I guess, each area.
We missed another one. We have
One zone at a time, one zone at a time.
Right. We've lived for 100 years.
So,
Can you comment on the, is there generally more gabled roofs or flat roof cornice arrangements?
We actually didn't get into that, we just we're taking this piece by piece, and we did the front yard, because that stood out the maximum, and then we were gonna try to do these other.
Because as you're talking about three-story and, you know, that, I don't know if that, I mean, basically 2.5 is the typical residential, right, height, which implies 2 with a gabled roof. It sort of directs people to that without saying it.
Yeah, the height issue gets more complicated. The cover, the two easy ones are the frontage and the coverage, so those are complicated.
But the height, 30 feet, was right in the ballpark in terms of what's there.
Even
It
that
wasn't
one,
like we had a lot of non-compliance with stuff a lot higher.
there's a couple of
There are a couple.
apartment buildings that
Yeah,
are 30
there's a
feet.
couple, but it's like 90%, or some large percent fits with that height, so I didn't see any reason to mess with it. Number of stories, oddly, some places you want to have a requirement that there be no less than 2 stories or more than 3 here, though it's kind of interesting, and I gotta go look to see how
Our DV, our downtown zones require it,
yeah,
minimum of 2.
yeah,
That's how Walgreens is 2.
yep, which not everybody agrees with yet, but I think, you know,
I don't-
nobody,
No, I think it's.
I think it came out about, what, you know, a lot of people won't agree with that, but I think the process and the application of zoning for Walgreens came out about where it's supposed to come out.
I think so too.
So, I don't know, a lot of people don't like it, but I think that's what you get when you apply zoning, and then you have a modern business like Walgreens comes into an older town. I mean, within those limitations, I think they did a pretty good job.
Oh, well, if you saw what they proposed
Yeah.
when they came in the door, I mean, it was like a strip parking between the front of the building, and I mean, you know.
And there's some awful ones around in
Yeah.
downtowns
like
and
that.
stuff, so
Yeah.
you did
I was
much
definitely.
better here.
So what is the status of I know the boards have plenty of, the Board of Trustees have plenty of other fun things to deal with, but what's the status of the kind of the zoning recommendation document in terms of
You know,
when?
it
Well,
hasn't,
we're just talking down.
yeah, it hasn't been presented yet, they've been a little busy on the stuff, but
Yeah, I know.
that's the next
But
tackle.
that would be a good one,
Yeah,
because there's some important
Absolutely.
procedural stuff and.
yep, no, absolutely.
Sandra, has the public comment on this?
Before you leave, we're here to speak. I just have a question, process question. Sandra, 32 Boston. Just a question here is about, when we see that final document, because I don't know that the public has seen that final document, can that be posted?
Yeah, no, it's before the Board of Trustees.
Before you, we'll print it and it will be posted,
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
thank
oh,
you.
yeah.
I have another question. I have a grave concern about the setbacks on the Groton Aqueduct Trail in downtown, and I've asked a couple of people, how do we initiate the process of getting that changed in the code so that our code backs are protecting the Groton Aqueduct in our downtown, in that vital area? How does a citizen do that?
Protected in what way?
Setbacks There are no setbacks on the Aqueduct Trail.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a similar process as to the DR2 zone, is they'll make a survey as of what the prevailing setbacks are and see if you can, because you don't wanna make too many buildings non-compliant.
And
So-
some obviously are like
Yeah.
this building.
But I think what this board has done is taken it on a case-by-case basis, and I think 66, 68, and 78, I think you require 10,
Yeah.
if I recall.
On 66, 68, being there 10?
I don't.
Yes, that's my
I
recollection.
remember
I don't
that.
remember.
Yes, that's my recollection, because basically it pushed back and it became one large building.
Oh, that's right. That was-
And
And then
mine-
100 Main proposed less, but you guys did not agree with that
So
project.
I think there are two issues. One is the aesthetics, and part of my concern is what happens in those 10 feet? What have you really
Right.
gained? It's 10 feet away, which really is not very far, and now you are looking down at cars, or what impact are you left with at the end? And the other is, I think the recommendation for the setback from the state, my understanding anyway, is that it was primarily a structural concern. Don't build
For the old
right
structure.
on our wall. So in the case of 100, the proposal is the structure setback. It's really hovering over that, and there is clear access to the structural.
Right, but then what's happening is we have 10 feet, and then we have three-story buildings 10 feet away from the Aqueduct Trail. That's a problem. I mean, that's a problem.
Exactly.
We just walk to Yonkers or back to Yonkers and see that that's a problem. So how are we
the
protecting
other
that
thing-
from a canyon, it being a canyon look?
Well, the other thing is,
I don't know.
the other thing is like the existing buildings, like the barn is basically right on the aqueduct, so.
It's over there.
It's over the aqueduct.
And the little building,
I
the little.
understand the
Yeah.
old structures, but how do you prevent those old structures from being torn down and three-story structures being built 10 feet away from the aqueduct? That would be my question.
We
to
have
the board.
citizens like you to yell at us and tell us not to do it.
So this is where the sky exposure plane comes in.
Again, I've asked several people, and no one's really said how to put that into effect. I think there should be some protection there. I don't know how to start it. I'm willing to
Well,
start it, I'm willing to fight
one
for
of
it.
the-
I'm asking for a process.
Well, here, one of the
No one's
things,
answering my question.
one of the things we first did, and it's in this computer, is I walked along the entire length of the aqueduct in Dobbs Ferry with the GoPro. So we have a record of every building that's along, facing west, and I'm just halfway through facing east. So that's a survey, to begin, okay, what's there?
Do you need
And then I look at Dwight and they say, okay, what's next?
We have some broad goals. It's going to take some time to look at what are the right tools for preserving, protecting, enhancing the Old Growth Aqueduct. And just as Javier said, it may not be a 10-foot setback. It may be a different design criteria, different strokes for different areas.
I will be
appropriate.
Okay.
So this could go on forever if we start talking about this.
All right,
But so
there's
there's
two races.
a study that we're starting to gather information on.
Well, I'm interested in promoting that. I just wanted the process to work on that from the public side.
I think so far you've done it in two situations, and you've done a certain thing, but also have architectural issues and design issues, so that you don't have the canyon effect of looking down into the cars. So far, they've taken the two buildings and made it 10 feet based on design. Sometimes, my point, sometimes we do it just on a case by case and see how it works. Because if you say it's 10 feet, you have 100 properties that are non-conforming, which you don't want to do. So you gotta be a little careful.
Javier,
I gotta do it in the microphone.
I moved Javier.
I move, we adjourn the meeting?
Move we adjourn, all in favor, aye.
Aye.